everybody, Lauren Ibach here, and today I'm going to share with you a little bit about my process of creating a typical piece. If you're familiar with my work, you know that I do a lot of quotes and Bible verses, and I really do my best to make all the letters and the words intertwine with each other to just make a really beautiful composition. And it's supposed to look effortless, but I am going to show you right now that it's not. So I hope that this video is interesting as well as helpful to you as you try to figure out how to make your compositions look more balanced and pleasing to the eye. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, so as you can see, we are now in Procreate, and no matter what kind of project I'm working on, even if it's something that I'm going to eventually do with an actual brush pen, I always start with a sketch in Procreate because it's faster and it saves on paper. So I'm actually just going to do everything in Procreate today because this video is sharing my typical process, and I typically do the majority of my work digitally, and so I'm going to be just staying in the app today. But just know that even when I do something in pen, I usually start here and then I print out the sketch and then I trace over it with my light pad with a brush pen. But I'm going to get started with my project here. So I'm going to add my canvas, which I'm going to do 8 by 10 today because that's a pretty typical size that I get asked to do. And I'm going to quick add my grid for my 8 by 10 canvas. And if you don't know about my Procreate grids, they have inch markings as well as center markings, and are divided into as little as 1/8 inches. So they're just really good guidelines for you as you are designing in Procreate. So if you're looking for something like that, because Procreate doesn't have a great grid system in itself, you can find them at my Etsy shop and Creative Market. So I'm actually going to hide that right now because I don't need it right this moment, but it's just good to add it right away. But I'm going to add a new layer, as you just saw, and I'm going to use my pencil, which is just the regular pencil that comes with Procreate, and I'm going to write my quote. So my quote that I'm going to be writing today is, "You can do anything you put your mind to." And I'm going to write this quote in multiple lines so that I can hopefully just see how the letters lay out evenly across the page. You'll see. All right, so as you can see, it's not perfect, but that's okay. It's just a really, really rough draft of how each word is going to be laid out on each line. So now I'm going to do my regular sketch of the actual design, and I'm going to stick to the same words on each line. So at least I know how they're kind of going to look as I do the sketch. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And I'm going to actually do it on a new layer. Okay, so I'm gonna quick just show you that for each line when I do the sketch, I oftentimes create a new layer so then I can overlap lines and still move letters over, and you'll see why I do that as I keep going. Okay, so as you can see, I have a very rough draft and it's not even centered. So I'm actually going to get rid of this now that I have all of my lettering sketched out. I'm going to pull up my grid again, and I'm going to start with this bottom line that's longer, and I'm going to get it centered on the canvas. Because I think this bottom line, since it's the most prominent line, it's most important to get that one centered, and these ones don't necessarily have to be as centered. So I'm going to kind of, as you can see, oh, I got rid of the wrong one. I'm going to get rid of that top one. As you can see, as I move it around, I'm trying to find places where the Y will fit in and where it won't cross over with a T. And I think this is actually a pretty good spot. As you can see, it's not perfectly centered, but that's okay. So I'm going to leave that there because this Y, I can just make that tail shorter and then it won't overlap with the N. So that's good. Let's bring back the next one. And I want to keep this one pretty centered. I think the H is going to fit nicely there. And I probably could get kind of fancy and do that like that, as you can see, crossing the T and doing the H, the top of the H there. But I think that will work pretty well. I actually don't think I will do that. But anyway, I'm just kind of figuring this out. But I will move this dude down a little bit. But then, as you can see, it was really helpful to have each line on a different layer so I could center it the way that I wanted it to be. And I don't really like how this looks in portrait, so I'm just gonna switch it to landscape. But I'm gonna combine these layers now because they're where I want them to be. And I'm gonna just flip the canvas and I'm going to select this and then just rotate it. So now it's the way that I want it to be, and I'll just get it recentered. Doesn't have to be perfect. But now it's recentered on the canvas, and that just looks better. So this is just the first draft. So I'm gonna get rid of the grid again, and I'm gonna add a new layer. I'm actually gonna rename this Sketch, just to stay organized. And I'm gonna turn down the opacity quite a bit. And I'm gonna do my first draft, and I'll just name that right now. Draft 1. Okay, so now I'm going to pick a brush pen, and I'm gonna actually use my round brush pen from my Essential Brush Pack, which you can also find on Etsy and Creative Market. So I'll use the round brush pen. I'm just gonna test it quick to see if it's the thickness that I want it to be, so I'll just write really. But actually looks pretty good, so I'm not gonna do any adjusting. But now I'm going to do a draft in the pen so I can get an idea of what it's gonna look like in the actual pen, and I can start filling in these little holes, as you can see, to make it fit more like a puzzle. Okay, so as you can see, it's getting there. It's getting there. But it's kind of sloppy in some spots, and that's okay. I, on purpose, don't spend a lot of time on this second draft because I can now see that I actually do want the pen to be a little bit thicker. And as I'm filling in the spaces, I'm realizing some things that I don't like. Like this Y is gonna need to come up a little bit higher. What else? Yeah, this tail is gonna need to be even shorter, stuff like that. So now I'm going to get rid of the sketch, or not get rid of it, but I'm gonna hide it. I'm going to make this almost so it's not there, so I can trace over it. And then now I'm going to be renaming this to be a final. And I'm gonna turn up the thickness just ever so slightly. And now I'm going to focus more on making the lines smoother and fit together a lot more nicely. And I'm actually going to work a little bit faster than normal, but usually I will agonize over every letter trying to get it to look a very specific way, but I'm not going to do that for this video because I will bore you to death. So I'm going to get started. All right, so now you can see I've got my final design in there. There are a couple things that I want to move around. So I'm going to pull up my grid just to have another guide. I'm going to get rid of this draft 1. As you probably saw in the time lapse, I did make separate layers for my final because I knew I would want to do a little bit more moving around. So I'm going to start with the first line. I want my D to be a little bit closer to the N in can. And I actually want to try moving everything over just a little bit to see how that looks. Let's do that, and then we'll move the D over just a little bit more. So as you can see, as I was writing as well, I zoom in and out a lot. I want to see how the full composition looks. So, because if I focus too hard on one word or one letter, a lot of times it'll end up thicker than another one. But thankfully, this one turned out pretty even. And thankfully, my round brush is generally pretty even that way. Whereas some other Procreate brushes you use are going to have more variation, and you're going to have to be more careful about pressure sensitivity. But that looks pretty good. Something else that I like to also make sure is that my first and last letters are ending around the same spot, or ending around the same spot like a line, you know? Or else it can kind of look like it's drifting up the page, and it kind of looks that way to me with 2 at the end, because this bottom part of P right here is a little bit higher, so I'm actually going to move my 2 up to about that same 1/4 inch line. So this is really, really picky, but it actually is going to help. I'm not going to move it up too far because then it'll look funny next to mine. So let's see, let's see, sometimes I like to compare. I think that was just enough where it'll have, I think I actually liked it lower. Okay, I think we're just going to leave it where it was. But now I'm going to look at it without the grid, just look back a little bit, and it looks pretty good. I think I'm going to move it up the page a little bit. So I'm actually going to I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave all these layers separate because I usually do. So I'm going to do that for this video. Do what I normally do, right? And I think I'm going to move this up ever so slightly. So, because I like it just a little bit higher on the canvas, because when people put a print in a frame, it's going to sit on the bottom of the frame, and so you're going to lose a little bit of that bottom part that's going to get hidden by the frame, and then this will help it to look just a little bit more centered when it's printed and in a frame. So I hope you enjoyed just checking out how I create a piece. This was done a lot more quickly than a normal piece. Usually it takes about 3 times as long as this, and then plus with all that time-lapse stuff in there too, that helps just speed things through. But I hope that helps you figure out a process that will work for you as well. And yeah, feel free to take on any of my design process ideas and implement them in your design process as well. So thanks for watching.